It's obvious. Everybody loves to watch Ben 10.
Now ain't that the truth? Ben 10 has been Cartoon Network's golden goose ever since it came out in 2005, and has had 4 continuous series lasting 230 episodes, with a reboot in 2016. And it's easy to see why. The concept was amazing, and it's a super fun adventure series. But I think it's a bit more than that. The universe it makes is so fascinating, and is more interesting than most people would think. It's actually my favorite sci-fi universe, and I'm actually making multiple sci-fi projects. Some of them are actually based off of Ben 10. Despite it being an incredibly marketable franchise, and admittedly continued to sell toys, there is genuine effort in its universe and aliens to make them make sense while being really unique and fun. Nearly every alien is realistic in the world it sets up, and their abilities match the particular planet they live on. They wouldn't need to do that if it's just sell merchandise, but there is a lot of development to most. So I want to go into them a bit, diving into the interesting aspects of aliens we see in the Omnitrix and any notable history they have, how they fit into their environment, having prey or predators, or a unique aspect to them that makes them more than just a random design. I will only be talking about the really notable alien species in that regard. I don't have time to go into all 59 aliens in the Omnitrix, so sorry. Also, I will not be going into the reboots since that is their own separate universe, and also did their own dive to alien worlds. Also, just a shout out, but I want to bring up the Intake Spectacular video series and beyond, where they personally go into their own version of Ben 10 aliens and their worlds in much more detail that's amazing. Honestly, they might have influenced some of my headcanons, they're that good. Even if you're not a fan of Ben 10, just like world building or sci-fi, I'd give it a shot. Anyway, let's get right into it.
Here goes.
Not much to say here. We don't get to see many individuals or their world, but it's described as a sun, despite it not making any sense and it's more of a molten world. What is interesting is their predators, crabdozers, are rock-like creatures that are described as living meteors who live off-world and come down to Pyramus to feed before rocketing out. It's nice how they evolve to be able to swallow and extinguish any pyronite it consumes, and its dense skin is immune to their fire attacks. It's a well thought out predator for the species. Now this is more interesting. Wildmud is pretty much the most feral creature in the Omnitrix playlist. Unable to communicate or see, it has a very animalistic attack style. There have been plenty of other Vulpimancers on the show, but they're treated more or less like alien wolves. Though to be Omnitrix viable, they are still somewhat as sapient as humans. Their evolution is interesting though, as it has been stated that Vulpin's ecosystem was actively destroyed by other aliens using it as a toxic waste dump, thus forcing the Vulpimancers to live underground where their sight was worthless and had to hunt with their other senses. Even their agility works as a hunt on cavern walls. It's a pretty unique way to do it. We can also see how they age compared to Wildmud and the other members of their species. It's also possible they were mutated to be this way because of the planet's pollution.
What comes around, goes around.
Now this is where things get complicated. The Petrosapiens lived on the planet Petropia, with a particular other alien, a single individual of a species called the Crystal Sapiens, which you might recognize as Chromastone. Sugalite, as the individual is known, was apparently created as the Guardian of Petropia, with an ability to generate a crystal with mystical power to revive the planet in case of a cataclysm, as well as all the individuals. This would come in handy after the mercenary Tetrax Shard stole the mystic crystal and sold to the warlord Vilgax to use it as a power source. But he did not know that Vilgax would use it as a weapon to destroy his entire planet and rendering his species practically extinct. This made Tetrax turn his life to try and fix his brutal mistake and to stop Vilgax and galactic tyranny. Luckily, he would befriend Ben Tennyson and assist him multiple times, until Ben repaid the favor as the Omnitrix held the Crystal Sapien DNA, and was able to revive Petropia and all the citizens. It's a unique story for an entire species to have this type of active history in the show. I like how they say they're actually made from silicon, which references the theory that silicon-based life forms may exist in the universe.
Gray matter? Oh man, give me a break!
Another alien that has had a huge impact on the series are the Galvins. Minuscule, frog-like species known for being the most intelligent species in the galaxy, even more than cerebral crustaceans, who aren't in this video. I love how they approach the usual gray aliens in this way, making them only 6 inches tall and very amphibious. I especially like how later designs make them even more unique. Their diminutive stature contrasts the hyper-intelligence the species has, which is also explained by the fact that they have 2 brains, one for basic body functions and the other for complex thought. It was a Galvin who made the Omnitrix, and Galvins are very respected across the entire galaxy, and even have a big sway in intergalactic affairs. They seem to have invented a good chunk of the technology seen in the show. Like, it's seriously unparalleled how advanced their technology is. Even the hybrid in their galactic genocide targeted the Galvin home planet first to ensure they could not use their technology to save the galaxy. It's really safe to say that Galvin had the biggest effect on the entire lore of the franchise. They made the Omnitrix, Ascalon, the Mechamorphs, Pyramus, the Nullvoid, Translators, the Prototool, so much. There were also another species as a predator, the Omnivoracious, which is a massive dinosaur-like heron that were cunning enough to hunt and easily overpower the Galvins, until they went extinct by a meteor that allowed the Galvins to thrive. It's nice how it mirrors actual frog predators, and the extinction angle is a unique way to handle it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, Upgrade Species was entirely made by the Galvins. They are synthetic species made out of trillions of nanomachines that can latch on and grow into any formation. We even get to see how they were made, as Azimuth in an experiment wanted to terraform his planet's lifeless moon with these nanomachines, generated by his helix, to cover it to make an inhabitable environment. But it worked too well, as it began to form its own sapient life. Azimuth couldn't rob this new species of its right to live, and gifted them the planet, with the two of them being friendly neighbors. Galvin Prime is shown to have plenty of mechmorph inhabitants as well, and seems they consider Azimuth to be their father. Though it is questionable if they can reproduce themselves or not. They seem to be able to produce a symbiote that's less sapient and more pet-like, so I personally headcanon that if two symbiotes of different mechamorphs combine, they become a new full mechamorph. It even goes into the idea of a corrupted mechamorph, as one, Malware, was incomplete and corrupted his life code, making him in a perpetual state of sickness, which instead of upgrading, he can absorb technology to permanently power himself, and becomes one of Ben's greatest threats. Synthetic species are always something I love to see in any sci-fi medium, and handling them as sentient blobs of nanomachines is a great way to do it. You can get a shape-shifting robot dog, it's awesome. Though apparently Derek J. Wyatt said that regular mechamorphs can freely shapeshift like Sip does, even though they're an objectively less intelligent and sapient being. Yeah, no. It's also why Ben can't actively use it since his forms are still slightly human, and he has a human brain so he can only use it when in other technology.
Let's wrestle!
Yet another big alien in the franchise with a ton of characters and even its home planet shown multiple times. Koros is a dangerous and desolate desert rife with predators, so of course the Tetramens had to evolve to compete. Having giant, beefy, durable bodies, extra limbs, and super strength would be indispensable to survive. And even their gladiatorial society makes sense with the survival of the fittest ideology. It's one of the few civilizations we see with different kingdoms, as we primarily see the Redwind Kingdom, led by Warlord Gar and Princess Loma. They seem to have become galactic conquerors as well. Though earlier statement described them as being Bronze Age technology-wise, which I might actually prefer. To me, I much prefer vastly different technology levels from aliens in sci-fi to make the universe feel richer. Not every civilization needs to be ultra advanced. It's also interesting how the females are traditionally stronger than the males, and defeating a female is a marriage rite. I would accept this more if Luma wasn't treated like the strongest Tetramen when she's as thin as a stick compared to other species, even other females. I also want to bring up Kolar, who's only interesting because they made him blue. That's it, he's just blue and he's caused a lot of fandom discourse. Some people say it's a subspecies thing, but it's far more likely it's either a genetic defect like albinoism or another race of Tetramens we never see.
Studying this amazing subspecies.
I'll show you, subspecies!
Also, they seem to have a weird automobile culture. I mean, I guess I can see these big dudes driving cars, but it's just weird.
Float like a butterfly, but sting like a stink fly.
There's not too much here, even though there's a few individuals, none are really important.
Bonk!
But it is interesting how a comic describes a bit of Lepidoptera, where Lepidopterans are described as diligent workers in hives tending to different plants to harvest. It's even said that they have queens here, which we never do see. Wonder what they look like. It implies they're much more a eusocial species like ants and bees, despite what the individuality of the members we see show. It's a neat touch to the species to make them feel more real. I also want to bring up how infant Lepidopterans have... Yeah, but I can completely buy Lepidoptera as carnivorous plants that feed off them, and infant Lepidopterans having herbicide would make a lot of sense. They even have a predator and bug lizard, a giant reptile with the ability to climb up walls and spray noxious gas that can melt through their mucus. If they are like bees, of course a predator would take advantage.
You wanna mess with a monster? Try me on for size.
This one is added because we do see its homeworld and it's actually confusing. Pisces is a giant ocean all around a small rocky core that only makes 2% of the mass, held together by an advanced gravity generator. And to me, it does not make sense for multiple reasons. The Volan have evolved to have a form for both water and land travel, even if they can't properly breathe on land for long, implying they had a need to evolve for short land travel. But it doesn't correlate with the environment. The only land is located deep within the planet, so it doesn't make sense how they can evolve to have landforms. It also just seems impossible for this planet to generate this way, especially when it shows how vulnerable it is in this state. It needs foreign technology or else it gets completely destroyed. The only justification I could think of is that it did have an actual surface once the Volan used, until it was destroyed and made the planet's structure much more unstable. It has been stated that there was a war between Pyro and Pisces, so maybe it got destroyed there. I can see how a Pisces Volan can evolve into an ocean, but not everything adds up.
You want to see something really scary?
I'm going to talk about the entire Inner System for convenience. For those who don't know, the Inner System is a dark and creepy galactic system home to aliens based off of popular monsters. But it's also funny how because of it and their sheltered existence, they view anything that's not monstrous as horrifying.
Monster! Horrible fleshy monster!
Let's start with ectoneurites. It's gonna be a weird way to explain how a species evolved to be like an actual ghost, but I think they pulled it off. Inner Phaetos is described as a spring of galactic chaos, like a rift between worlds. No Voyager has been able to survive the trip, and is one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. It's been described that ectoneurites have protoplasmic DNA to adapt to it and Inner's antimatter sun. Though the Inner System sun is kinda weirdly canon. It has been shown to have one, but I don't think it works with how the planets and species are shown. I think that sun was a neighboring sun that they personally revolve around a black hole. But yeah, adapting to a chaotic rift like that, of course your biology is going to be unconventional. Your physicality would vary, and that would explain how they can phase or levitate. I like to believe that it's caused by them being able to split apart their molecules to make themselves less dense. And it is canon that ectoneurite sapiens is kept on the molecular and genetic level.
An ectoneurite's consciousness exists even in a few strands of DNA.
It also explains how strong UV light could kill them if their molecular structure is that unstable. It could also explain how they could possess people by phasing their molecules through their body and hijacking their nervous system. Also, to those who say they adapted their second skin to save themselves from sunlight, no. Only the Omnitrix gives immunity, and the So stated it.
He couldn't go into the sun. He had to stay in the shadows.
You never had that problem when you were Ghost Free.
That's exactly why he needs me. Somehow if we're joined, he'll be whole again.
Every other ectoneurite is just as weak to light. The Omnitrix can protect the user from ectoneurite possession and corrodium radiation. If it can save the user from the most mutagenic material in the galaxy, it can be used for a bit of sunblock. Even early merch showed it was a weakness, and the second skin was just to give this scary unique design. Speaking of corrodium, it has been shown that the entire system has been irradiated and that the races are immune to it. It could be why they're considered undead, as it would take a lot to adapt to it. Though weird how Loboans can be considered undead. Loboans are pretty standard wolf humanoids, and their forest environment makes sense on why they would adapt that way. Also, it's funny how they made werewolves live on a moon, though their sonic howls are definitely alien-like, especially with how their jaws split open. It even makes anatomical sense. Look how big their diaphragm is to inhale air and then shoot it out like a cannon to weaponize it and peel their mouth so it doesn't get damaged by the force. Next is my favorite alien species, the Thepkufauna on Norkufos. It's been described as having the most corrodium in the galaxy, so its inhabitants are the only species that can handle it without protection. People call it out for being unrealistic, but I adore how they handle it. For when their bodies have no organs and are attached to a shelled head that generates dozens of bandage-like limbs to form their bodies to move around, and it can extend them and even completely unravel. It's said that they hide underground from their harsh plants' heat and winds, and it makes sense. Not only would you not have organs to be mutated from radiation, but you can unravel to maneuver through small tunnels. It makes surprising amounts of sense. I also like how they did design-wise. Now, Transilians are interesting as they have Tesla coils in their bodies, and apparently they're biotechnological. It seems to imply they have adapted it due to the intense lightning storms on the Nur Transil. Either they did it to get free energy, or just to survive being struck. But considering they have been shown to not need oxygen, they could just use electricity as a substitute. I love the steampunk aesthetic they all have and how they get really creative with the designs. It's neat how they're also hyper intelligent, which works so well with their technology, and oh come on Jared Day Wyatt, why? Because Ben used Frankenstrike once in a fight and didn't do anything hyper intelligent means the entire species is intelligent? It's BS. They still are to me, and it makes so much sense and it's much more interesting. Like, look at this world. What happened to it? Was it terraformed by the Transilians? You cannot convince me they can make mega structures like this and aren't hyper intelligent. Though I also want to talk about the Vladats, vampiric aliens who are interesting as they are sapient species who prey on other sapient species with intense mind control abilities. It's up in the air if they are the Transilians' natural predators or are invaders, but they have a history of enslaving and consuming the Transilians and their world until they revolted with the rest of the system to make sure their entire species went extinct. It's a brutal story, but it's also very interesting. It also brings up questions of morality of a species consuming other sapient beings, but it seems that Vladats do not respect other life.
I do not cooperate with my inferiors.
Which would make sense as they evolve to control every other species for easy prey. It's also interesting how they have a weakness to light, but with a less intense way than ectonurites.
Time to rock and roll!
This might be a surprise to those who haven't kept up with the show, but Cannibal species, the Arburian Pelorota, are extinct. Their planet Arburia was destroyed by a planetary parasite after the sample of the Omnitrix was taken. It really brings a lot to the idea that the Omnitrix was made partially to store DNA in case of a species extinction. But it sucks since Cannibal is one of the most iconic aliens and it'll be cool to see another one. Oh wait, Parallel Gwen 10 has one! Okay, why Omniverse, why? It's interesting how even though Cannibal is one of Ben's heavy hitters and is extremely versatile, it has been stated that Pelorotas are very peaceful and adapted their shells and rolling to avoid predation, much like an armadillo, and Ben was one of the first to use it for offense. It's a unique approach to alien abilities. Also, this is a more grown up Pelorota and I hate it. Stupid cannon pants.
I've got Upchuck power!
Upchuck only got a really interesting species development in Omniverse. It got a redesign in Alien Force, but then got explained that there are two subspecies of the Gourmands, the Perks and the Mercs. Hey, look at that, Ben 10 fans, we got a design change that actually is a subspecies. It's also shown that both these races have a single queen, implying that they're actually a eusocial species, which you'd never think they were. It's also said that the reason they can ingest so much matter is that their stomachs connect to a pocket dimension shared by their entire species. And it must be based as they have canonically consumed 11 of the 63 planets in their system. Though they are clearly able to energize what they consume, so something must be up.
I'm not just big, I'm way big!
They may be a massive Tokusatsu reference, but it's done in an interesting way. They're not born, they're created from cosmic storms and are extremely rare in the galaxy. They don't have a home planet, they're created in space. That's how they're so massive and powerful. It's weird how they're also treated almost like galactic protectors. I really wish they were added more in the series aside from some synthetic mutants. Also interesting that we get descriptions of a conceptual predator that's actually a virus. A really neat way to do it. We don't really know too much about this species' homeworld, and while we do see a few individuals, none are really important to mention. What's interesting is how it reproduces. Yes, Big Chill's reproductive cycle is very well documented. Necrophrygians are asexual and have an 80-year reproduction cycle, where they enter a nasty mental state where they relentlessly consume male to make a nest to provide for their dozens of eggs, which hatch and fly into space, where they feed off of solar plasma. Yes, Ben got pregnant and had 19 kids. It's bonkers. It's also another alien with the predator, Psycholeodopteran, who uses pheromones and wing beats to hypnotize Necrophrygians before consuming them. It's implied it's heavily hunted for narcotic uses.
Spider monkey!
Honestly, not too interesting. We do see a few individuals, but we namely see their home planet, Arachnosimia. It's pretty much exactly like you would expect, with a tree-dwelling civilization that's primitive and tribe-like. But it seems the reason why they live in trees is to avoid their predators, especially the root shark. Yeah, I can see why they evolved to be able to climb so well.
Alien X! Seconding! Water-stopping motion carry!
We all know Alien X. Being able to change reality in any way they want to like a god. If the two other voices in their head agree, which is basically never. It's a good idea in a story way, but you also can consider it evolutionary wise. All that power would be absolutely insane to have and can lead to disastrous consequences. So having an innate ability that would ensure that every decision would be debated on and reasonable would save a lot of trouble. If only though that was useful until freaking Omniverse. Also, yeah, technically they're extra dimensional. They're created in a void outside the universe called the Forge of Creation. Well, that's one where you can evolve to have complete reality warping powers.
Spin!
We actually do get to know some stuff about these turtle boys. Their home planet looks to be a super lush grassland, leaving the inhabitants without worry of food and seemingly no predators, with their ability seemingly just for ease of mobility. Because of this, the Alda Prince have very lax lives and mostly seem to philosophize and discuss the world around them. Even lying is just a concept to them. Though I do need to bring up Adwaita, a master sorcerer of the species. Yes, they can learn magic. It seemed that Adwaita has been deified by the species due to their power and likely age.
I think Adwaita worked.
Curiously, Adwaita does not have the same anatomy as the rest of their species. McDuffie says that they have altered their body by magic, but I like the theory that he's so ancient he's actually a primitive version of his species.
Take them down one at a time.
This one's interesting as it completely inverts how most other alien species are introduced. Usually we get one in the Omnitrix as a form, before we see a few individuals, and then potentially we get a whole story of its race. Incursion had a big role in the story, and then became reoccurring characters, and then we get them as an Omnitrix form. Incursions are a race of frog-like aliens who are one of the biggest galactic conquerors in the galaxy. They were the main threat when Ben first turned to Alien X, and they have continually appeared to cause conflict and world-ending stakes until we get an entire arc in Omniverse, where they conquer the world and Ben unlocks his own Incursion form to infiltrate the ranks and take them down. It was an interesting approach with an Omnitrix alien. Also, the Incursion race is technically responsible for the creation of the Omnitrix, after Ascalon was stolen to stop a war and ended up destroying their planet, though they somehow survived to be a galactic empire.
Oh, is this gonna hurt?
Okay. Yeah, there's no excusing this one. Even when I first saw this alien before I got back into the show, I wondered what the hell I was looking at. Yeah, a Lego gorilla alien. It's not a synthetic species, it's somehow a natural one. Like, how? Yeah, I know there are plenty of aliens that are like Earth species, but that can make sense if they have a similar environment and those are actual living species. Even like how the Thefku fawn are mummies, they're mostly just a vague idea of a mummy and are dehydrated corpses wrapped in linen. They're still properly alien in their execution. This alien looks exactly like plastic bricks made in Denmark 100 years ago that you can buy in Target. It's just way too specific and breaks the entire world building. You will not evolve to become Legos unless you're being hunted by giant bare feet. According to the little world building we got, it seemed to have evolved to blend into the multicolored rock-like structures on its home planet. And while it is an explanation, I feel it's not enough to justify the design. And that's pretty much all Block's got, so yeah, it makes sense on why the fanbase is so hard on it. It's just so hard to justify. This is the one alien I feel most acts like it was just made to be a toy in a species second. But hey, if Blocks is the most unrealistic alien in universe, it's really saying a lot to how solid Benton handles its alien species. And those are just some Omnitrix aliens. A ton of other interesting species also got their fair share of attention and interesting developments. And I can't talk about everything here, I could be here for hours. And that's not even talking about the other interesting settings or events that this show does. Like the Null Void, an interdimensional pocket dimension made to hold the galaxy's worst criminals. Ledger Domain, the dimension of magic. Yes, real magic with its own system and history and weird unique species. Other timelines and dimensions with parallel bends and events. Various technology or ancient artifacts, cultures, organizations, everything. They put so much imagination and effort to make this world feel so alive and interesting, but also real in a weird way. It's my favorite sci-fi world for a reason. It somehow manages to balance everything. It makes such a bonkers universe, but everything works together almost seamlessly. It's more than just a wacky kids show, it does so much with its premise and does it fantastically. Honestly, maybe in some other franchises should take note how Ben 10 manages to handle its world building. Though, honestly, I haven't even talked about the best world they made. The Sumo Slammers world! I'm not kidding, they did the characters go into a video game world trope better than any other media I've seen. This world is so freaking cool, I love the cyberpunk Japanese aesthetic, the weird landscapes and environments, the insane characters and abilities, the implied lore it has, all the weird enemies, bosses, and locations. In this ingenious way they incorporate the show's element into this new setting, I can't get over this world. I want to know so much more about it, I want to know other characters, history, species, locations. Seriously, why did they only do this once? This world is so cool. Please come back to it, I'm begging, come on! Anyway, yeah, I'm a pretty huge fan of Ben 10, and it has a stranglehold on my work for a few years now, so I wanted to talk about one of my favorite aspects about it that I feel gets no attention. I wanted to keep this short, but I do feel there's still plenty more to talk about, so if you want me to make a sequel to this, or if you want to talk about something specific that the show did that I should talk about, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.